Hi, and welcome to the Leadfeeder webinar, um, tearing up the marketing playbook. So today I've got a couple of people on the line with me. We're really glad to have you guys with us. So let me just introduce our speakers real quick. So we have Daire Summerville, who's the digital growth manager here at Leadfeeder. Jonny Butler, who's works in growth marketing Leadfeeder. Anna Crowe, who's our content manager, then myself, Andy Culligan, as the CMO. So a couple of things. Why did we decide that we wanted to do this webinar today? So we ran a pretty successful webinar last week. We feel at the moment that people are digesting a lot of content and want a lot of help with the things that they're working on, especially given the current climate. So let me just give a quick intro in terms of what we're going to be covering. So from a Leadfeeder perspective, I want to bring you through like how we first reacted to everything in terms of the past, let's say 14 days, because the past 14 days have probably been the trickiest, I'd say, in this current climate and current changes around the COVID-19 crisis. So from my side, what was the initial reactions that we seen as a team, and how do we paint the way forward, or how do we see the future panning out for ourselves? Then we're going to deep dive into the content side of things. So what's Anna been working on, and how have we reacted from the content perspective in terms of message? What are some tips that you guys can take away in terms of what is the best way to push forward during this time, and how do you adapt your content to suit that? And from a paid perspective, so a paid marketing perspective, which is a core focus for us here at Leadfeeder, Daire is going to bring you through some of the trends and the KPIs that he's been looking at, to see, okay, where can we make improvements, and how do we scope towards the future during this sort of unknown time. So we can't benchmark ourselves against the last time something like this happened, because we're in a situation where it's just not possible. So how do we make decisions quick, and what are those decisions to make? Another core focus from us at Leadfeeder is ABM. Jonny is managing our entire ABM process, and he's going to bring you through some ways in which we're learning to adapt over the past couple of weeks based on what's happening in the external environment with our ABM approach. So one thing that I think we just need to start with, and this is, I don't mean to have it so drastic, and I was laughing with the team earlier in terms of, I was trying to find a quote that just shows how you can adapt to tricky situations, or adapt to situations that evolve, right? And everybody knows Charles Darwin. I was looking for a better quote than this, or somebody that's a bit more relevant to business or whatever. There aren't many. The next best choice, by the way, was Drake. So I'm sure everyone's pretty happy that I didn't choose Drake as this particular example. But I think it does stand true that, in this particular situation, we can't stand still. There's a lot of shifting and moving that we're going to have to do over the next couple of months as marketers in order to fit in with the new normal. And if you do stand still, the chances are that you're probably going to be left behind. Now, this is good as marketers, though. On the other hand, I see it as an exciting time. It's a time that we're going to be really able to stamp your place in the market. You're going to be able to be ultra creative as well. You're going to be able to help people with the message that you're pushing out. And I think that as a marketer is something that's quite interesting. You're not going with the norm. So, for marketers that might have been bored of doing the same thing repetitively, this is not the time for that. So it's good news on that behalf. I'm just going to check the chat real quick, because I think I can hear a number of different chats coming through. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear us okay. Yeah, everybody can hear, that's fine. Okay, so where did we start? So let me just bring you through what I was looking at and what the team were looking at over the past couple of weeks. Okay, so this is just a graph that shows you some of our most of our lead gen efforts. Obviously I don't have the numbers in here, because we need to keep that under wraps, but in terms of what we were seeing, right? So from the start of March, it was sort of up and down a little bit. You can see that at the very start there. So 1st of March and the 29th of Feb were weekends. Therefore, we don't invest too heavily over the weekend, because we're targeting B2B. So, we find that during the week is when we do most of our lead gen. We've seen it being sort of up and down, but it's generally okay. Then the 14th. So this day here, I think it was maybe the 14th of March, which is a Friday, a bit below the previous Friday. But on the 13th of March, this was the day that Donald Trump announced that there'd be travel restrictions into the US. And pretty much after that, we could see a sharp decline, right? So what we started to see then on March 15th, 16th, 17th, so on, is like we were stuck in a bit of a rut, right? So with that, what we needed to do is we needed to act pretty quickly. And what we've seen now this week is that, you know, things are starting to make an incline again. So things are starting to go on the up. But how do we manage to get those things back on the up is like how we reacted initially. Okay, so if I look at like the 14th of March, so this is a screenshot of a conversation that I had with Alex Ollie. So Alex Ollie is one of the co-founders of a company called ReachDesk. Anybody that was on our webinar last week would have known Alex. He co-presented the webinar that we did last week with me. And they're a direct mail company, but myself and Alex not only are ReachDesk a customer, but I've worked with Alex for many years with other companies. And I just texted him. He happened to be in New York, and he was trying to get back from the airport, and we were just texting. We said, okay, well, we need to do something here. You know, we need to jump on things a little bit fast. As I said, like, you know, we're still closing, but signing up people was a bit of a struggle at certain points, and I could see that coming from that week. So at 9:41 p.m. on a Saturday evening, myself and Alex decided that we'd do a webinar the following Thursday, right? So we decided, okay, let's catch up on Monday and see how it maps out. So on the Sunday evening, you know, with the team, I just pinged a message out to the team and said, okay, guys, like, you know, it's a bit crazy. Let's have a bit of a chat so there's no fears. Like, let's try to keep business as usual. So for ourselves, like at Leadfeeder, we're a remote working company anyway. So like I'm based out of Vienna in Austria. Anna's based out of the US, Daire's in Ireland, and Jonny's in the UK, right? And all of us typically work from home. Daire does a bit of work out of a co-working space, but generally most of the company works from home anyway. So from that perspective, we're pretty much used to that process. But just in terms of, you know, a lot going on externally, let's have a chat about it and let's see how we can get aligned and get some things done over the next couple of weeks, right? So if we look then on that particular meeting on the 15th, on the Monday, we decided, okay, well, look, we're going to push out this webinar. We need to get executing pretty quickly. And with that, you know, if you're in marketing, you understand that if you want to push out any marketing activity, there's a list the length of your arm that you need to complete in order to get that thing out the door. So you can see here that Jonny took over, created a landing page, created the emails with a couple of other guys there, and started pushing this out, right? 5 hours later, we've seen that there's 233 registrations, right? So like this is blowing through the roof in terms of the amount of registrations that we're getting. So far, the most successful webinar that we've ever pushed. So that is another indicator to us that people are really dying to learn more, right? At the moment, people are sitting at home, they're doing the home office. It's a time for research and a time for, you know, a bit of a self-improvement, let's say. So when the webinar topic that we did last week was around creating pipeline during these, you know, not so certain times, and how you can keep on top of that as a sales organization and a marketing organization. So it was pretty much on point, but as well as that, we gave people a lot of actionable information that they could take, and we explained that clearly in the messaging that we pushed out. One day later, we see the 430 registrants, right? So the next morning on the Wednesday, we're looking at 430 registrants. The previous evening, we were looking at about 200 less than that. So, you know, it just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing. We did a big effort internally within the organization, got people excited about it, got people pushing it out on social. On the day of, then we ended up getting over 600. We actually, now that I look at this was actually false. We actually got nearly 700 signups. We managed to max the room out at 250. So this is something that we'll learn from as a marketing team, that in this particular webinar service that we're using, our package only allowed up to 250 people, but it wasn't something that they had made known to us. Therefore, midway through the webinar, or not midway, a few minutes into the webinar, I started receiving red notifications telling me that I needed to upgrade our platform, which wasn't possible during a webinar when there was over 250 people on it. So that's a learning for us for the future. Probably we would have gotten close to, I think, just based on general webinar trends, we probably expected just a bit over 300 people in the room. But yeah, so it's, you know, it was a very successful webinar. I'll also be running some ABM sessions over the next couple of weeks as well. We'll send out just more information about that after this if people are interested as well. Also, maybe leave a note in the chat if you're interested. We can get back to you on that. In between as well. So in between, it's business as usual as well. So we're not a huge marketing team. But like, you know, in between like these reactions that we're trying to do, like create new content, which Anna's going to bring you through, change our paid structure, change our change strategy, keeping an eye on all of the numbers, as well as pushing forward with new campaigns from an ABM perspective. We're also looking at, okay, how are things reacting across the world? So we're also doing our typical reading. We're sharing stuff within the group. We're sharing stuff within the marketing team, making sure that we're making the right decisions as fast as we possibly can. On top of that, at the same time, we're also doing other business as usual things. So last week, the entire company was supposed to be on our bi-yearly, or sorry, we do twice per year. We do a team week event, which flies everybody from the entire company around the world, flies everybody into one location, and everybody manages to spend some face time with one another. And on top of that, we also have a lot of content streams running at that. So obviously last week that was cancelled. We had to cancel the week before last, quite late in the day. So I said the week before last, okay, well, let's get everybody together and let's make sure we do some sort of team building session. So we did a team building session, which lasted about 2 hours. We found out things like, for example, that Anna, one of her quasi-relations, is the lead singer and violinist of Kansas. So if anybody knows the song Carry On Wayward Son, you'll know who Kansas are. But this is also just in between all of the chaos and all of the craziness that's happening outside in the world. We're still managing to get things done, which are general day-to-day stuff. So at the one hand, we're like jumping around, trying to make sure that we're being reactive. On the other hand, we're trying to keep the ship as steady as possible by still keeping on top of the day-to-day. And this is really important, you know. It's important, like from my side, and I've also seen this in the team, and it's great with the team, that nobody's really panicked. Everyone's just coming up with new ideas and saying, okay, can we do this? We discuss it as a team. Is this going to be possible? Maybe not, maybe so. Let's try it. Let's see if we can push forward with it. And as Daire is going to say in his piece, that it's really important that when you do these things, you just capitalize on it quickly. So move quick. Okay, so if we look at the next day after the previous webinar, this is about moving quick. So we sat together as a team that morning and decided, okay, well, look, this webinar is obviously something that people are interested in. It's obviously, you know, it worked well yesterday, so there's no reason for it to not work well again. Let's capitalize on that. Let's do another one next week. So we brainstormed for a little bit and we spoke about, okay, what are the best things that could offer best value to people? And we said, okay, well, look, a lot of marketing teams at the moment are probably struggling in terms of what should we do next? Where should we be cutting budgets? Where should we be focusing our efforts on? What type of content should we be doing? What are the KPIs we should be looking at? Everything that we're doing, but we're moving pretty quick, I feel. So I said, okay, maybe there's some things that we can share with people. We'll take a bit of a look under the hood of the Leadfeeder marketing team, and maybe we can, you know, people could learn something, or, you know, maybe other people could share what's working for them. If you want, please do so in the chat. And then maybe we could just, you know, have a bit of a chat about it and see if anything here is applicable to people. So I think like one of the key things that I found, and this is like speaking true to everything that I just mentioned, is that like I really think at the moment more so than ever. So this is always the case. So like there's a phrase that I've always used, is that, you know, the strongest pitch is no pitch at all. Okay. So I did have that in this slide, but I don't want this to be a pitch. Okay. So honestly, I think at the moment we need to be very wary, just generally, that like when we go into any sort of buying process, or we're approaching prospects or approaching anybody that could be a potential customer, I think the number one focus for the outreach should be, let's just, you know, be willing to help. Let's figure out where people are having issues. Look to fill those gaps for people, but not necessarily from a monetary perspective, getting anything ourselves. You know, in the long run, this will help because we've created connections. So I fully believe that in the long run, although people may not buy from you today, if you help people out at the moment and you really you do it in an empathetic way and you truly want to help people, that will pay off massive dividends in the future. I mean, that's karma, right? But I think generally in business at the moment, I think this is the only way that businesses are going to win. You have to be patient, and at the same time, you also need to be empathetic. So with that, I'll hand you over to Anna, and she'll bring you through, okay, what's been changing on our side from the SEO and content perspective.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. You can go to the next slide.
Good.
Awesome. So as you know, the coronavirus has kind of been the largest topic that people have been talking about for the past few weeks, and it's clearly taking an effect on search. As you can see from the chart here, it's one of the most common search queries that we're getting right now, and it's even surpassing things like weather and news, which are typically the most common and most consistent search queries. Next slide, Andy. Awesome. So a lot of different businesses are having a sudden and unexpected loss in revenue. So many businesses are being forced to trim budgets and maximize efficiency, while other companies are starting to see an insane spike. Zoom and Skype are two of those businesses. They've actually achieved their highest search interest for the last week. Skype grew almost 300% and Zoom grew over 1,000%, which is insane. Next slide, please, Andy. Thanks. So one of the big questions that I kind of see buzzing around in the industry right now, especially within SEO, is how is coronavirus impacting SEO metrics? The truth is it kind of depends on which industry you're in. We do know that search reflects human behavior. Why? No one lies to the search bar. Before the whole pandemic came out, searches like, why did I get married? Had over 40,000 searches monthly. Things like, how do I use Google? Had over 1,000 searches. So we know that there's a person that lives behind every search query, and that search is driven by something. It's motivated by something. So us as search marketers, we need to understand that, and we need to start to speak directly to that motivation, especially during these times of, of crisis. So I'm using these search queries to start to identify patterns and trends, and then I bucket these into interest based on our target audience at Leadfeeder. So for example, right now we know consumer behavior is changing. People are shopping online, people are buying more household goods, and more are working from home. So it's no surprise to me that sites like The Daily Burn and Health.com are starting to see a major spike in organic traffic, specifically over the last 2 months. Whereas other sites like Forbes are starting to see a slight drop. We're also seeing search engines adapt to their different strategies. Bing and Google have both rolled out different search interactive features. You can see in the GIF on the side the different aspects that Google has launched specific to the coronavirus search. Things to remember, these types of features might be rolled out to different industries in the near future, maybe later this year or early next year. We're also seeing schema, different types of schema being rolled out. Things like special announcement for things like if your schools are closed or if quarantine guidelines. Google and schema.org want you to use the specific schema to help acknowledge that in the search results so that it shows up differently. They've activated COVID testing facilities as well as event attendance mode. So as Andy discussed last week in the webinar, we're seeing a lot of events move from offline to online. So if you add this schema data to your site, you're able to tell users that it is now online, and you'll have like a different view in the actual search results. So just a few things on that. Next slide.
Anna, there was one question there from Linda. Oh. She just asked, where are you getting these keyword researches from? Where do you do it?
So you can use many different tools. You can use your own Google Search Console. That's free. You can use Google Keyword Planner. SEMrush is a tool that we use. There's many different aspects of it. I hope that answered your question. I didn't see that. Thanks, Andy. Can everyone hear me? I just noticed that someone said we can't hear the sound. Are you guys good? Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks for going to the next slide. So as we want to continue the path of SEO and content, even though we're seeing teams everywhere start to see performance losses in the organic channels, just because there's an overall drop in search demand. But before you can start to drastically shift your strategies, you want to identify why you're losing traffic. Is it because of the coronavirus, or is it because of a drop in your organic efforts? So internally, we started to look at Google Search Console, and we started to compare our impressions versus our search queries or keyword terms. So if your impressions are dropping, but your keywords remain flat, maybe a slight change, slight fluctuations of like 3 to 4 points, that's most likely due to COVID-19. That's not necessarily anything that you're doing in the lack of organic efforts. So once search demand returns, and it will, you'll start to see a drop if you take away those SEO activities. SEO is a long-term investment. It's not a short-term game. So you just want to continue to move forward with SEO efforts, even though you might be adjusting different marketing channels. Next slide, please, Andy. Awesome, thanks. So what does this all mean? So there's two important things we can learn from some of the slides I just talked about. The first thing was we're starting to see changes in the search results, the new interactive formats, the mapping, different featured snippet options to win. So it's important to keep those in mind for the future. Google might roll these out across different industries later in the year or early next year. The second thing is that Google appears to be focusing on the most trustworthy organizations to serve content. So I want to point out one topic there was trust. Society is pretty much built on trust. It helps binds us together, but it also helps deal with our ability to predict the future. So it helps us set expectations. So when someone enters a search query into Google, we trust that search engine to deliver trustworthy results. So in today's new normal, how do you establish trust with your content for search engines and consumers? So we'll talk about that. Next slide, please. So the answer is empathy. If your goal is to provide an amazing experience to your customer online, then you have to make sure that empathy is everyone's job. So empathy puts the trust back into your SEO-focused content. And I'll show you a few examples of what that means. So the first thing, talk to your customers. This could take many different forms. Majestic, they are an SEO tool. They published a blog post, just a short statement acknowledging what they're doing with their staff and how they haven't necessarily been affected yet. OK Dork is another example. They sent an email to their customers. It wasn't a sales pitch. It wasn't an ask. They were just genuinely asking customers to join them for lunch and do a little chat. Andy and the guys from Reach Desk mentioned that they were doing this too, and they were sending them free lunch during that live chat or maybe a virtual coffee event. So the one thing I want to point out here is you have to be sensitive during these times. You don't want to do this if this isn't necessarily impacting your business. So for example, there's been quite a few trending issues on Twitter about how different brands are communicating to their audience. One of the big ones I noticed was Taco Bell. They sent an email to their customers saying that they felt an obligation. I know I love burritos and I know that we have to save them at all costs, but I'm not sure if that was necessarily the right message to send. Another one came from a makeup company. They were offering deep discounts. Again, I don't think that's necessarily the right timing for us to all come together about deeply discounted makeup products. So you don't want to come across as insensitive during these super sensitive times. Next slide, please. Awesome. So as I mentioned, partnering with other brands can really help expand your reach right now. Last week, we partnered with Reach Desk. We got almost 650 people to register just using both networks and both different reach. Digital types of partnerships right now, like webinars, podcasts, blog posts, Instagram lives are becoming extremely popular. Even music festivals are going digital right now. Elvest, which is a financial advising blog, they're hosting Facebook Lives with financial experts. So get creative. Think about what your audience could use right now in their time of need. Next slide, please. Cool. I'm in a Slack group with Buffer. The marketing director, Kevin Lee, was sharing with me how he's going to change his messaging on the homepage to kind of acknowledge that emotional connection with their customers that they can get. Switching it from necessarily being so salesy to being more empathetic in their headline. Just slightly little marketing messaging changes you can do across your site can really impact and show empathy during this time. You can also use education and your own tools. Oh, sorry, Andy, can you go back one? Thanks. So Outlier is another great example. They are an AI tool. they've managed to take their AI and partner with the CDC in order to deliver a newsletter to customers on the daily to track patterns and trends that's going on with the coronavirus. So they're using their AI technology that was not meant to be used this way to help expand and educate customers, not just their customers, but everyone. Next slide. Awesome, thanks. So as Andy mentioned, now is not a time to pitch, it's a time to give. So how can you add value to your customers in their time of need? Reach Desk, another great example, they're offering gift like care packages with like hand sanitizer, maybe a pizza gift card, things like that that are relevant right now that people can't find. BombBomb is another platform that has just opened up their platform free to educators since they know everyone's at home right now with the kiddos trying to homeschool. It can be difficult right now. So just trying to think of different ways to think out of the box of ways you can give back to your customers. Last slide. Cool. So now it comes full circle. Empathy should always be a common practice, but right now it's super, super important. It helps you understand your customers' pain points and helps to reveal different ways that you can create better content that improves your messaging and your product. So we want to think about this as a short-term strategy, but for long-term engagement. And with that, I will pass it off to the next person, please.
Super. Thanks, Anna. Thank you for that. By the way, guys, we'll be taking questions at the end, so we'll have a couple of minutes towards the end just for that. So just to push on here, I'd like to introduce Daire to take over the next session on PPC and what we're doing there. So just bear with me a second.
Thanks, Andy and Anna. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little about how we adapt PPC in this challenging times. Little of what we considered like certainties only a few weeks ago remains so today, and PPC is actually no different to that. What worked for you in the past won't necessarily work for you now. People's habits have changed drastically in the last few weeks. Search and social media habits have changed drastically too, and your PPC campaigns must adapt to these changes or they'll fall behind. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can hear you now, Daire. My heart stopped for just a moment there, Daire. He's gone again. So my heart has officially stopped. So we give Daire just a second to get back on because I think I won't do it justice for sure. But I think like if anybody has any questions, now would be a good time to ask if there is one.
Oh, there's Daire.
Oh, there's Daire's back.
I think I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
The Wi-Fi in the rural west of Ireland isn't up to scratch yet.
You can turn off your video if you want, Daire. Maybe that will help.
I think it's okay. I think it just dropped for a couple of seconds.
Okay,
yeah. So I'm not sure where I got cut off there.
So we didn't hear anything you said about this slide.
Okay. So yeah, we're just going to go through 5 simple ways you can adapt your PPC campaigns. I'm not going to cover messaging, but everything that Anna has mentioned previously also holds true for PPC. I think I'm dropping out, Andy, am I?
No, you're fine. You're fine, Daire. You're
sorry,
good.
I got a message there. So at this time, speed is one of the most critical factors when it comes to like changing your PPC campaigns. And like most people these days, I've been watching a lot of news briefings, and I was just watching one the last day where the head of the World Health Organization's response to the coronavirus, and he was asked like, what's the most important factor in the time of crisis? And I thought his response was very interesting. He said, if you need to be right before you move, you're never going to win. Perfection is the enemy of good when it comes to emergency management. Speed always beats perfection. And I think the same logic applies to your marketing campaigns. If we can go on to the next slide there, Andy. Decisions need to be made faster with less data. Like in normal times, like most PPC marketers, I'm very analytical. I'm sure the team will agree. It's very data driven from our side. And I'm usually a big fan of this approach. But in these challenging times, tests are less useful. The time taken to run a successful A/B test will be very valuable time less to adapting. You just simply don't have the time to wait for a successful test to run. Decisions need to be made on less data in shorter periods. So normally at Leadfeeder, we'd run a test over a month to get like significant level of data. We simply just don't have that luxury at the moment. And even if we did have time to run that test, people's habits are changing so fast. So like what worked like a couple of weeks ago necessarily won't work now. So you just have to trust your instincts, monitor a few key metrics on a daily and a max weekly basis, and react based on your instincts of like what you see changing. If you see hesitant buyers, if you see a drop in conversion rates, if you see a drop in search volume, you're going to need to react fast to stay relevant. So moving on to the second point. In a lot of companies, paid marketing can be one of the biggest expenses outside payroll. So in challenging times when like belts are getting tightened, it's usually one of the first ports of call. So it's likely a lot of people on this call have already come under pressure to reduce their spend. But of course, like a lot of upper level management, they like to throw in the caveat without impacting growth. And I usually react like Stanley when I get this task put on my desk. But what if the solution could actually lie within your best performing campaign? So just going to talk through like an idea where you could have a creative way to cut your growth. So Andy, if you go on to the next slide there. So many brands invest in their own brand Google Ads campaign. And these campaigns often produce a lot of conversions at a very low cost per acquisition. But actually, what is the real impact of these campaigns? Like what percentage of these conversions would you get for free via organic if these ads weren't there? And what percentage is actually incremental? If you're truly measuring the impact of these campaigns, you should actually only count the incremental conversions as the impact of this campaign. And actually, one of the benefits of like these like challenging, uncertain times is that a lot of companies are more open to making bigger changes like this than they would be in normal times. Like usually if you suggest this during normal times, you probably wouldn't be able to run this campaign because people are very risk averse and don't want a big change like this. So now is actually a great time to propose a change like this and actually see like what is the impact of these campaigns. So we've been testing this out at Leadfeeder, and it varies for every company, but we're actually only seeing that like 15% of these conversions are incremental, and the other 85% we would actually get anyway via organic. And when we send out the slides, like I've attached a detail of how you'd actually run a full test like that. You need to do it for your own brand because it varies a lot by industry, but it's a creative way of like thinking of reducing your spend without having too much impact on the amount of like conversions and signups that you're actually getting. So on to the third point. This crisis actually hasn't impacted each industry in equal measure. While industries like travel and hospitality sectors are getting hit very, very hard, there's other industries like healthcare, medical devices, online learning, productivity software, even like hardware stores that are actually seeing significant growth at this time. So if your product can offer like a solution to any of these industries, you should start moving your marketing budget across to targeting these industries. If you're going to be targeting like travel at the moment, you're going to have a really hard time because they really just don't have the money to be spending. Whereas if you target these growing industries or even the ones that are kind of fairly stable, you're going to actually see a lot more return on your investment. It seems like a simple step, but actually how many people have actually made a change where they start targeting the places that are seeing like the biggest growth at the moment. So on to like our fourth step. So delivering more for less is always a good idea when it comes to paid marketing, but it's even more important now. So with all like events being cancelled or moved online, most sales teams are crying out for more leads, and they actually have a lot more time now to be following up and like on leads that are like less qualified than they would be previously. So if your PPC campaigns can deliver additional leads at no extra cost, you'll be in a very strong position to keep them campaigns running because they'll be vital to the success of the company. And this can be done in a number of ways. You can look at ways of like lowering your lead scoring thresholds, changing your conversion action so it's like doesn't require as much details. At Leadfeeder, we actually like to use our own product to do this. So with our product, you can see all the companies that are interacting with your campaigns that don't convert. And if we see like companies that are showing a lot of engagement that are within our ideal customer profile, we automatically send these to our CRM with an open task for our sales team to maybe follow up with a demo or just to reach out to these people to see if they're interested and want to learn more about the product. So this is a way of getting more leads without any extra marketing spend. And like the example we're showing here on the slide is actually like from one of our campaigns. And we've seen Roche, a very large medical device company, that are interacting with a lot of our content at the moment. And there's multiple people in the company that are spending a lot of time looking at the product. They fit into our ideal customer profile at the moment. And obviously they're not impacted too much by what's happening at the moment. So we would pass this across to our sales team and they can start to follow up with them to see if there's anything that they can help them out with. So that's just another idea of like how to deliver more for less and not spending any additional marketing spend, but producing more leads for your sales team to follow up with. And our last point that we're going to go through is all about how you measure results. So for a long time, the focus of PPC has been on conversions and the cost per conversion. But under this approach, every conversion is assumed to be of equal value. And we know like in a lot of businesses, this just isn't true. There can be huge variations in the value of one potential customer and another one. And it's about time like our paid marketing efforts should reflect this. So this is also like a very big change to your campaigns. And I think it's a good time now to make these changes that you set yourself up for future growth. So on the next slide, I'm just going to talk you through how you would actually go about making this sort of change. Yes, so this is called like value-based bidding. So most companies currently use a bidding strategy, which gives the ad platform the flexibility to bid more for users who are more likely to convert. So the likes of like target CPA or enhanced CPC, if on Google, they're examples of that sort of strategy. The next kind of step onwards from this is to move on to a bidding strategy that has not only the flexibility to bid higher based on their likelihood to convert, but also on the potential value of that customer to you. So you can bid more for customers that are a higher value and may bid less for ones that are a lower value. This makes a lot of sense in practice, but it hasn't actually been done too much up until now. And this is called value-based bidding, and it's available already in both Google and Facebook. So it uses the revenue figures to figure out which campaigns are producing the best return and moves the budget to the ones that are producing the best ROI. It's kind of a big mind shift for people in the marketing team where you actually have to think of returns more from a sales point of view in terms of what are the potential revenue rather than the number of conversions. So we're very used to reporting on the number of conversions. Under this approach, you start reporting on the actual potential revenue that the campaigns are delivering. So I think this is like a big change and to your campaigns, but it's an important one and it would set you up for a lot of future growth. And I think it's a good time to make a change like this at the moment. So just like summing all that up, speed and efficiency are really the keys at the moment to PPC in these challenging times. You need to react fast to stay ahead. So I'll pass you across now to Jonny, who's going to talk about ABM.
Just before, there's just one question. Thank you for that, Daire. That was really good. There was one question that came in. So Debbie, yes, ICP is ideal customer profile. Susan, yeah, I see your point there in terms of the trick that sales need to be able to follow up with a different message in a demo. This goes back to actually helping people. So the specific example that Daire gave there was was based off of something that he was looking at before, which was based off which industries are still actually doing pretty well. Like, so he just shown there on a previous slide that the medical industry is actually doing pretty well, right? So from that perspective, to a salesperson, that will give them more of an intent signal that they could say, okay, well, look, maybe a harder selling approach towards these companies would actually work now because of what's happening in that industry currently, right? That's not to say that you need to be careful with your follow-up, of course you do, but you could probably go a little bit stronger there than you would in other industries that are maybe struggling a bit more. In industries that are struggling a bit more, the follow-up would be very simply seeing how you could help more. So it may even be putting them into a nurture. It may not be a direct sales follow-up immediately. It might be handed right back across over to marketing, and marketing are then able to nurture with information which is applicable to that company. So the information that Daire was looking at there, let's use Roche or however you pronounce it as an example. Again, it could be that information could be taken from or you could create a feed within Leadfeeder which shows based off of industry which ones are the ones that you want to be targeting, based off of the research that you've done, based off the industries that are now still doing okay and keeping the head above water and so on, where it's more or less business as usual. Keep them in one feed. Have a separate feed which is showing all other companies which are acting, or showing quite a lot of behavior or intent behavior. Take that information and feed it into your nurture campaigns, right? So maybe look to do more retargeting against those on, for example, LinkedIn, pushing more content towards them, getting to convert with email, following that recognition on the website anonymously. So, like, based on what Daire just mentioned there, it's possible to do both. So, okay, so next up we have Jonny, who's currently managing all of our account-based marketing campaigns. So Johnny's going to bring us through exactly what he's been focused on over the past couple of weeks.
Cool, thank you. So yeah, I'm just going to the first slide here. Before I talk about what I've been focused on for the last couple of weeks, I just wanted to give like a really quick overview of what account-based marketing is for anyone who's kind of wondering what we're talking about here. So the easiest way to think about it is that account-based marketing kind of flips the typical inbound marketing funnel on its head. So if you look on the left-hand side here, we have what you'd see to be a typical inbound marketing funnel. Doing things like SEO and content marketing, you're driving like high volumes of traffic to your website. You then probably have some kind of lead capture process where maybe people download ebooks, you collect their information, and then you use the information you collect to start qualifying them and figuring out whether they're the right kind of people to become customers before sending them to your sales team. Account-based marketing basically flips on its head because you're identifying your ideal targets beforehand, and then you're starting to run campaigns to actually target those people directly. So it's about focusing on a smaller pool of higher value clients as opposed to inbound marketing where you're looking at a much larger pool of lower value clients and then looking to whittle them down to the ones that are relevant to you. That typically works by initially identifying your target accounts, using your ideal customer profile, which is based on firmographic data, revenue data, tech data, that kind of stuff. You then define buyer personas. So this is the buying committee at those companies that your sales team want to talk to. And then you create content and messages for those personas and account types, and you look to engage with them on specific channels. Like, this doesn't have to compete with inbound marketing. Like, we both can actually complement each other quite nicely because your inbound marketing is typically focused on, as I said, those lower value prospects, and your ABM is focused on the higher value ones. The key thing about ABM is that what you really need to do with it is align very closely with your sales team. So what we're trying to do with our account-based marketing campaigns is basically build a solid high-value pipeline for the sales team and help them progress it towards a sale. So if you go to the next slide. So like, what are we looking at and what are we tracking? So at the campaign level, we're looking at typical campaign metrics, conversion rates, cost per lead, stuff like that. At a higher value, sort of like looking at our overall account-based marketing program, what we're really looking at is the amount of revenue that we've closed that we've helped influence. And we can look at things like projected pipeline value as well, where we're kind of tagging deals correctly within our CRM. Typically what I've seen over the last couple of weeks is on a low level, like a campaign level, when we're running, for example, lead generation campaigns on LinkedIn, the actual cost per lead has come down slightly over the last couple of weeks. And that could be an indication of what we've talked about already, what Anna and Andy have both touched on, is this thirst for educational content. Like a lot of people are being thrown into a situation where they're having to launch new strategies, do things which they've never done before to try and, plug some kind of bleeding into the company, and they've got to figure out how to do this. So people really want educational content right now. At a high level, account-based marketing campaigns, as we're dealing with enterprise clients, quite a lot of them, they take, it could be, we're talking about rather months than days or weeks to close. So how exactly that's affected our pipeline right now, we can't see those numbers like within our pipeline right now. So we kind of had to figure out another way to see how this is affecting us. So what do we do next? So if we go to the next slide. The single best thing you can do is talk to your sales team. There's not like a huge amount of data out there at the moment. I found this survey, which was run, I think, a week ago by Bravado, which is a social network for B2B salespeople. They surveyed, I think, about 134 sales executives just to see how coronavirus is affecting them. And this slide is actually quite hard to see, but you'll kind of see the top thing here is 48% of people say it's harder to contact decision makers. 41% of people, are saying that deals that were nearly closing are being pushed, new opportunities are slowing down, and so on and so forth. And if you go and talk to your sales team, depending on what industry you're in, obviously, you'll probably hear something similar. So talking to our sales team, there's still plenty of clients we're talking to who are ready to buy and are looking to close, but there's also plenty that are just displaying a little more caution right now, and they're pushing back buying decisions slightly. Maybe they've had budgets been frozen and stuff like that. So likelihood, we'll see that Q1 will stay on track as we're basically at the end of Q1, but Q2 will see some kind of impact from this kind of drop off in our pipeline. So how does it impact our spend? Well, firstly, one thing to do is, I would say, is keep an eye on your spend and your pipeline length. So with that, that set of target accounts we're focused on, typically what we'll have done is like tier them based on their potential revenue for us as customers for us, and then we'll have worked out different customer acquisition costs based on those revenues. So what we want to do is talk to our sales team and try and understand if we've had a tier 1 client that we know is worth a certain amount of money to us, and we were willing to spend this amount of money over a 3-month pipeline. If that's been extended to 4 or 5 months, we're going to have to make that budget last a little bit longer. So just want to keep an eye on those sorts of things. But overall, what can we do about it? So if you go to the next slide, yep. Kind of echoing what we've already spoken about here, what we really want to do is continue to engage our target accounts. So in particular, when those target accounts aren't looking to buy yet, it's still really important that we stay in contact with them. So Anna's already spoken a ton about creating content focused on empathy and education. And that's obviously like our job here is to take that content and make sure we're getting it in front of the right companies. Like these high value potential target accounts, we need to get the content in front of those ones that are going to count to us. So how do we do that? So if we go to the next slide. There we go. So what we've got to do here is this is really about alignment between sales and marketing. And that's what account-based marketing as a whole is about. So the first thing here is to make sure our sales teams maintain one-to-one contact with our targets. So one of the first things I've done is kind of try to collate all the content we have that are really going to help people during this period and make that available to our sales teams. So putting it in shared drives, sharing it with them in Slack, and basically saying, this is all the content we need to be sharing with your target accounts right now that's going to help them get through this and help them continue to create pipeline and generate revenue. So instead of picking up the phone, say, for the sales team and chatting with a target account and hearing that they put a freeze on spend for a couple of months, instead of being a situation where it's kind of like, okay, I'll put a task to give you a call in 2 or 3 months' time, the sales team can basically continue to stay in contact with them over the next 3 months, continue to drop them one-to-one messages, continue to say, hey, here's our latest ebook, or we've got this webinar coming up next week. I think it's going to be really relevant to you, and continue to maintain and support them during this time when they're kind of trying to figure out what to do. In addition to that, one other thing the sales team can do is to continue to engage with those accounts based on how they browse our website. So within Leadfeeder, for example, we detect the companies that are visiting your website. We can create feeds based on specific pages they visited. So for example, here I've got a feed that I created called Blog Visit, Keep Calm, Create Pipeline. So this is a blog recap of the webinar we ran last week. And this is basically telling us all the companies that have visited that blog and have read that blog. So what the sales team can do is they can connect these companies here with the corresponding company on their CRM, And then that visit data can get sent straight to the CRM. And then when the sales team are checking in on their accounts within our CRM, they'll get a kind of a list of all the pages and blogs that have been read on their website, and they can use that as a trigger to reach out to them. If they've seen that a potential client has read this blog about creating pipeline, they can follow up with an ebook that's associated with it and basically say, hey, here's an additional piece of content that might be really helpful to you. As a marketing team, in terms of what we can do to support the sales team, one thing that will work really, really well here is account-based retargeting. So what I can do with this custom feed I've created in Leadfeeder from everyone who's visited this blog is I can export this as a CSV. I can then upload that to a matched audience account list on LinkedIn, and I can run campaigns targeting the companies and people at the companies who have visited this blog. So I know, for example, say our buyer persona is we want to target marketing managers or marketing directors. I can target all the marketing managers and directors at these companies with an additional piece of content that I think might be helpful to them. So in this case, for example, we're running an ad campaign pushing our ebook about how to turn marketing spend into revenue, because it's an additional step from that, how to create pipeline during a time like this. So what's the goal of all this? Final slide. So obviously, at top level, like we're a business, we'd love to still close deals and make money, so would everyone, but we're kind of very aware that's not what a lot of potential clients are in kind of the space to do at the moment. So like our main goal here is to actually just build stronger relationships with our clients or potential clients. Like what if we can help them get through this successfully and we can support them, then if we've done our job properly and we've built this stronger relationship with them, then when they're ready to start spending again, in maybe a couple of months or 3 or 4 months, however long it takes, then we should still be there to help them, and we'll still be there when they're making that buy decision. And if we've done it well, we'll know them better as a target account, they'll know us better as a service, and we'll have managed to sort of like maintain and even grow our pipeline and put ourselves in a really strong position for a few months' time. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thanks, Jonny. Thank you so much for that. There's been a couple of questions coming in that I can engage here now. ABM is account-based marketing, Amanda. So Alex, we can get to that question in just a moment. We'll go to some questions now, and if anybody has any further questions, please put them into the chat bot here or into the chat window here, or else in the question side. Again, Jonny, Daire, Anna, thank you so much for putting that content together. I'm sure people here found it very useful. Before we finish up and go to the Q&A, I just wanted to, we used this slide last week in the previous webinar that we did with Reach Desk. It's it's a tough time at the moment. We're in the midst of a recession. We don't know which way it's going to go. It could be fine. It's looking like it won't be though. But however, within these tough situations or these tough times, there's always companies that make it through. And if we look at the companies that came through in tech during the 2008-2009 recession, which was, the biggest recession in a long, long time, we're seeing massive companies come through such as WhatsApp, Slack, SendGrid, Stripe, Airbnb, Uber. So it's there's plenty of opportunity there. Within tough situations or challenges, always remains opportunity. So it's always worth bearing that in mind. Those who will win will have done things differently. So why did these companies win? Is because they adapted to their environment. They gave products which were filling a need within the market. They were also changing their messaging to represent filling that specific need, etc., etc. So it's about how we move now as marketers. And how we adapt to the current environment around us, which is going to be important, whilst at the same time keeping an eye on the day-to-day. So I mentioned earlier on the presentation that it's that it can be challenging to try to counteract or to jump on things which are changing, as well as trying to stay on top of the day-to-day without going crazy and without your head spinning. I'm sure the guys who probably agree with me here a little bit in terms of, like, I sometimes move at 1,000,000 miles a minute, and those guys sort of pull me back down to earth a little bit. But like, I think like there's a certain amount of chopping and changing and moving around that we need to do. As marketing leaders, I'd say like my suggestion would be listen to what your team are saying. Like if they think you've got a crazy idea or the idea isn't going to work, listen to them. Don't go down that street and just say, okay, I think it's a great idea because I've had it. Listen to what the team are saying, and trust the guys on the team that they're making the right decisions. As you can see here, like the guys have done some great work over the past couple of weeks, and I really hope that it's been useful to everybody on the call. So with that, let's go to Q&A. I see that there's been some questions come in already. So like I can start on one particular level where somebody had asked about Terminus. So Alex, it depends on your use case with Terminus. We aren't like, so I've used Terminus in the past mainly for display purposes. So ABM and pushing ABM or pushing specific ad campaigns out to specific companies based on IP recognition. We don't act as the ad platform. However, we do integrate with platforms like Terminus. So metadata being one of those. We don't have a direct integration with Terminus as far as I know. However, if it's possible to do so via Zapier, we can do, but we're not a replacement for Terminus. So Matt asked one question just in terms of how to understand how Zapier could be used to link everything up and automate the entire process. So Jonny, you've a bit of a dab hand at Zapier, having set up all of our Zaps over the past, since I've been at the company in any case. Some of the experience that you've had creating like connections between everything using Zapier?
Yeah, I mean, Zapier generally is a good platform. I mean, like we have direct integrations, obviously with a variety of CRMs, so you don't need to use Zapier. For the systems we don't have direct integrations with, Zapier can be used quite easily. Like I've never had a massive problem using Zapier. I think it's quite good. Their support's quite good if you're having trouble setting up any apps. So, like, yeah, I'd say, depending, it's hard to know without saying specifically what you want to do, but it's a pretty easy platform to use, and I haven't had any problems syncing data from one to the other.
Okay. So thanks, Jonny. Richard has asked just around LinkedIn remarketing and like around personalization. So Richard, just on the LinkedIn remarketing piece, maybe you could reach out to one of us afterwards, and we could send you on an ebook that we've just put together on LinkedIn remarketing. Using Leadfeeder and how that works. On-site personalization is not something we do currently. Matt has asked about cold email marketing tips. Anna, we've been speaking about this, right? We've got something in the pipeline for the next, I guess, week. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So we will be launching a blog post that features a couple of different email templates that our sales team's using, just to give other people ideas. So hopefully we'll send a shout out email and post it on Twitter and stuff so that everyone can make sure to read it. Super.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. Richard, if you could just add me on LinkedIn, I'll make sure that you get it. You can find me at Andy Culligan. Let's see. So there's a number of different questions here in the question window here. I see that we're coming up to the hour, but like we can go over a little bit if everybody's happy to. So let's start with there was one question from Nicola during Daire's presentation, which is how do you measure incremental versus organic for branded keyword ads, Daire?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to do this. It kind of lot depends on the size of your brand and what level of traffic you have. There's kind of three main different approaches you can take. If your brand is fairly big, you can do turn it off in one country and keep it on in other countries and measure the difference between what you're seeing in terms of like the percentage of them that are coming through in one country and the ones that are coming through in the other. A lot of people's brands mightn't have that like level of traffic to do that. So you could simply do like a before and after test where you do like 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, or a month on and a month off, where the main thing you're looking for is the percentage of impressions that become signups. And if you look over a long period of time, you'll find that figure is fairly consistent for your branded keywords. It's the percentage there. And you can find that in Search Console or in actually Google Ads as well. You'll be able to find the number of like impressions your brand is getting, and you just want to see the percentage of them that are becoming customers, and you just want to do a before and after test of that. There'll actually be a blog post going out like early next week that will have a link to how that's more detail on how that's done.
Thanks, Daire. Another one for you here, Daire. So for optimizing based on those revenue campaigns that you'd mentioned, how can you implement an approach or for agency services that don't necessarily have set prices?
Yeah, so this I've seen this question. This is an interesting question. It can be done. It is a bit more complicated than obviously a company that has set pricing, but there's a few different ways you can do it. The first way would be that you don't actually have to send the conversion at the time that they sign up. So you can use a thing called offline conversions and import them into AdWords at a later date when you might actually know the revenue that's coming for that. I'm not sure if that would work in terms of like the agency size, because you probably want to get it in within like 2 weeks or so. An alternative method to do it would be to if you have like different kind of services, so like a marketing agency might have PPC services or SEO services, and you know historically that like the SEO services, you make twice as much money off them as you do off PPC services. So you could do a simple revenue thing where like SEO sign up that someone is looking for that service is worth twice as much as a PPC sign up, and use the historical revenue figures for them over the last year of like the average revenue per customer. It's not exactly like tied to specific revenue, but it's better than treating one for one, because one is twice as valuable as the other. So you're like slowly moving towards like a revenue based approach.
Thanks, Daire. Okay, so there was a couple more questions here. Just double check the chat. I think a lot of people want to get that LinkedIn retargeting ebook. Perhaps we'll send it across to the entire mailing list here that have signed up for the webinar. Perhaps that would be of interest. So also reach out to it. Yeah,
we can do that.
Thanks, Jonny. Let's like maybe as well we can connect with people on LinkedIn as well. If people have any further questions, please just do reach out. We have another couple of questions. So Carrie Blood mentioned here, just curious if we've modified our pricing or developed special offers to help alleviate budget concerns for prospective customers. No, we haven't. If you review our pricing levels are reasonable. It depends on how much companies we're recognizing on your site. For larger customers, when it gets above a certain pay grade, then we do have a certain level of negotiation there. But it's best to take a look at the pricing page on leadfeeder.com. You'll see the pricing there. It comes in tiers. So like based on how much you're recognizing, it will go either up or down. Again, the entry level pricing is not crazy. Plus, we also have a 2-week trial in the lead up. So there is some means to be able to test it, see if you get value out of the product, and then following that, then we can chat about the pricing side of things if it goes over the certain level. So Kobe had asked here, what's the most popular CRM that we see our clients using? So we have, like, I can take that one on. We have a number of different CRMs that we see people using. So it also like regionally makes a bit of a difference as well. So in the US, we have a big chunk of customers that are using Salesforce. So Salesforce is a big one. Then across Europe, then we'd have quite a few that are using Pipedrive. Others that we do integrate with, for example, are Zoho and Microsoft Dynamics, for example. To say if anyone is in particular popular, you'd need to look at which CRMs are popular in general, and the most popular CRM system is Salesforce. So if we were to add everything up and look at, okay, what's the most popular, it's probably Salesforce. Mix of, I would say, Pipedrive and Salesforce. And I think that is it in terms of the questions. Guys, there's one more. Richard asked, can you guys do a real-time visitor view which can be combined with live chat? I'm looking at Drift and Intercom, which connect with Clearbit. However, this looks fairly limited. So right now we don't have that functionality. However, this is it's something that's on the product roadmap. Exact dates of when that will be available, I don't know off the top of my head. But Richard, if you want to reach out to us separately, we can discuss that in detail. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for staying on a little bit longer as well, and thanks for all the questions and the interactions. Feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. And from myself, I hope this was very interesting to everybody and people were able to take something from it. And we'll hopefully have another one out for you guys for next week.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.